Okay, so getting back into our coverage over X-Men Red, we do pick up with X-Men Red issue number 11. Now, right off the bat, we pick up with Storm on a date with a character known as Craig. Now, when it comes to Craig, he's actually an astronaut that used to work for NASA, but was sent over to Mars to study Mars right after the mutant race had basically turned Mars into a livable planet. NASA and also the American government wanted to know more how the mutants were able to take Mars and turn Mars into a planet where mutants can live on and the possibility of humans could also live on down the road. Now, with that being said, while he was on there, Uranus attacked, and that took place back in the whole Axe Judgment Day event. Now, while being in the middle of that event, he went out of his way to protect two young mutants. Now, after doing that, when it comes to the mutants of Arrako, they really accept him as one of their own. They really do love him a lot because, again, he went out of his way, a regular human, to protect two mutants who could have possibly died by the hands of Uranus. Now, with all that being said, of course, him and Storm got a little close, and so they're trying to have a date with one another. Now, I kind of like this, but honestly, kind of worried. And the reason why, because when it comes to Storm, after her and Black Panther had separated, Marvel gave her a lot of different characters where there was the possibility she could fall in love with those characters, but unfortunately, nothing ever happens. And so we're left to wonder that this could be the time where Storm might finally find love again with a new character, which is Craig. But unfortunately, their dinner gets interrupted by Charles Xavier. Now we do jump over to Sunspot, Nova, and Kobach. Now you do have the three characters currently sitting in some kind of hot spring trying to relax. Now while trying to do that, well, out of nowhere you have a beam of light shoot up in the sky. Now this beam of light, Sunspot knows where it is coming from. It's coming from the external gate. Now here's the thing, because the external gate was originally made by Apocalypse to give him and others access into Otherworld. Now here's the thing though, because if I remember correctly, the gate was closed, but the gate is supposed to still lead into Otherworld. But again, the gate is supposed to be closed. And so you have Sunspot realize if somebody is trying to use the external gate, which means somebody from Otherworld, that means we have the possibility of trouble coming very soon. Now we do jump back over to Storm and also Charles Xavier, where we see the two characters about to have a meeting. Now when it comes to these two characters, we kind of find out that there is some bad blood between these two characters, but honestly, it makes a lot of sense. And the reason why, because remember, when it came to Charles Xavier, when he had formed the second team of X-Men characters, it was only because his original team was in trouble. And so he went around the world and found different members. One of them was Storm. Now, when it came to him and Storm, he told Storm like, hey, listen, what you're doing here is great and all, but you should use your powers for a greater purpose. You should use your powers to help out an entire race. Your race, the mutant race. And matter of fact, he sold her a dream, made her believe that it was better for her to help out the mutants, but to leave the ones that she was currently helping at that time survive another year by being this witch god who helped them raise their crops. Either way though, she basically took the dream that Charles sold her and she kind of regretted. Now, even though she did a lot of great things over the years in Marvel Comics, saved the world, saved the universe, it's still the idea that she kind of feels bad that she was not there for the people who was she originally helping all those years ago before Charles had arrived. Now, the real point of this meeting is really more of Charles Xavier and Storm meeting up to talk about Magneto. Now, remember, Magneto died back in the Axe Judgment Day event. Now, after he had died in that event, before he died actually, he made sure his final words were given over to Storm. And so when it comes to Charles Xavier, he feels like he has the right to know what was Magneto's final word. And the reason why, because him and Magneto were close friends. He has the right to know what his old best friend had to say before he had died. Now, when it comes to Storm, she's all like, no, I'm not going to tell you out of respect for him. Like, he told me, and that is it. But for Charles, he feels like, for some strange reason, because Magneto was his best friend, he has the right to know. But he's also ordering Storm to tell him, like she's still one of his students, like he's still in charge of the X-Men. But the thing is, he's no longer in charge of the island. He's no longer on the Quiet Council. We saw that in Immortal X-Men. Like, basically, it's Charles and the rest of the Quiet Council about to step down to let a new group of people take over the actual council. Either way, when it comes to Storm, she's all like, you don't control me. You are not the boss of me. But on top of that, you don't have the right to know Magneto's final word. And the reason why Charles wants to know so bad is really more about, did Magneto know way back then that Charles Xavier was corrupted, that Charles Xavier was being controlled by Sinister? Because this is a callback to Sins of Sinister. In that storyline, Charles and a few other mutants were being used by Sinister to create an alternate timeline where he was in charge. And so is Charles wondering if Magneto knew way back then that Charles was already corrupted, and that is why Magneto stepped down. Except you have Storm say, no, he had no idea. And matter of fact, his final words were to watch over you, but not because of Sinister, because you're now one of the last 3 people who came together to build this great nation, and he was worried that you may begin to act like your old self, which could end up destroying everything we built here on Krakoa, but also on Arrako. And so that is what he told me to do, to watch over you. Now, you do have Storm leave, except when she does leave, she tells Charles, you are no longer welcome on Arrako, but also we are no longer friends either. Now, we do jump back over to Sunspot and Nova, and when we do, we see the 2 characters arriving at the external gate, wondering who or what is trying to come through the actual gate. Except when someone does arrive, it's a brand new character we have not seen before, but he also tells Sunspot and Nova, Genesis is coming. Now, we do jump over to X-Men Red number 12. Now, when we do, we actually pick up in the past. Now, with this flashback, we actually jump over to Emmeth. Now, remember, we saw this dimension in the earlier parts of Jonathan Hickman's run on the X-Men. Now, when it came to Emmeth, this was a dimension that gave us a bunch of different kind of creatures that was attacking the Earth many years ago. See, many years ago, when it came to Apocalypse, he was actually a good guy. Him and his wife, their main goal was to lead the mutant race into greatness. And matter of fact, they lived on an island known as Akora. Now, the thing was, the island was split into 2, Arrako and Krakoa. And to protect the mutant race, but also the Earth, you had the island Arrako and also the mutants on that island go through the portal to hold back the forces of Emmeth. And of course, one of those people was Apocalypse's wife, but also another character known as the White Sword. Now, when it comes to the White Sword, he was one of the many mutants who fought alongside with Apocalypse and also Genesis to hold back the forces of Emmeth. Now, when it came to the White Sword, just like the other mutants on Arrako, he went with them into the other dimension to hold back the enemies. The problem was, though, as soon as they arrived, The white sword disappeared. No one knew where he went to, except they then found the ivory spire. Now, when it came to the ivory spire, it was him saying, I'm going to hold this line right here. If our goal is to basically make sure their evil demons are not able to go over to Earth, then me and my army are going to hold this line right here. And he had 100 men in his army that he was able to revive over and over and over again as a way to keep making sure these evil creatures from Ameth would not be able to arrive on Earth. Now, when it comes to the white sword, we see him talking to a character known as John Ironfire. And matter of fact, he was the guy we saw at the very end of the last chapter, who was trying to tell the mutants of Arrako, hey, something big is about to come. Genesis is coming. And that right there tells us, okay, Apocalypse's wife, Genesis, is possibly evil again. And let me explain, because when it came to the mutants of Arrako, when they arrived in Ameth, she led this army there. And matter of fact, she fought against a character who was trying to go over to the Earth and destroy the Earth. And that was Annihilation, this dark god. Now, when it comes to the dark god, it needs a host. And so when it came to the last host, it was killed off by Genesis, except then she put on the mask of the dark god and became the new host, and that led into X of Swords. Now, at the end of that event, when it came to Saturnine, she took the mask and turned it into a staff, to say that, listen, as long as a staff, it should not be able to influence you as much as the mask did, meaning that you should be able to control the power of the dark god, but not become the host for a dark god. Except when it comes to the white sword, he's telling us that is not the case at all, that Genesis was once again influenced by the dark god, Annihilation. And so now she's about to come back to Earth and try to take over the Earth once again. And so when it comes to the white sword, he's all like, hey, listen, I need you, John, to take my sword and take my message over to Arrako on Mars to warn them what is coming. Genesis is coming. And so when we jump over to the present day, it's John Ironfire trying to tell Storm and other people in the room that they need to go ahead and build up an army for Arrako to defend itself against Genesis. Now, when it comes to Storm, Sunspot, Fisherman, Nova, they all know if she is coming here, this could be a huge problem. She is a powerful character. She's up there with Apocalypse. Heck, she's probably ahead of Apocalypse. And so you do have everybody in the room saying, we need a plan. Except when it comes to John Ironfire, he's more of like, no, we don't need a plan. All we need to do is get an army ready to protect this land. But it's Storm saying we can't do that because thanks to Uranus back in the Axe Judgment Day event, a lot of mutants are dead right now. And so unfortunately, Arrako's numbers are really low than it was at the very beginning of the island being on Mars. And so it's Storm saying we can try to get ready, but unfortunately, I don't know how we can get ready for someone like Genesis. And so for John Ironfire, he kind of feels like maybe it is too late to protect this great land known as Arrako. But then we have to jump over to a gate that was actually hidden. And when it comes to this gate, it can only be used by one particular person, and that would be Genesis. She has arrived on Arrako. So yeah, it is already too late for Arrako to defend itself. Now, when it comes to Genesis, we come to find out that she has been working with a particular group of people who are also working with another group of people. Now, when it comes to the first group, they're better known as the Coven of Aqaba. And remember, the Coven of Aqaba was kind of like the main bad guys for Excalibur when it came to the early days of Dawn of X. But they also was working with Morgan Le Fay. And also, they really tried to remove mutants from Great Britain, from the United Kingdom, which they were able to actually accomplish. But this organization was also working with another organization, and that would be Orchid. And remember, Orchid is the main bad guy of all these different X-Men books. They're trying to get rid of the mutant nation. They're trying to get rid of Arrako, but also Krakoa. They're trying to get rid of the mutant race completely. And so apparently the coven of COPPA have been working with Orchid, but on top of that, Genesis has somehow been in contact with both parties. And apparently she's here to make sure both parties get what they want, including her. Now, when we jump into X-Men Red number 13, that is when we actually pick up with the Great Ring. Now remember, the Great Ring is the government body of Arrako, very similar to the Quiet Council for Krakoa. Now, when it comes to the Great Ring, they are listening to Ironfire talk about what happened over in the meth. And of course, he tells them the white sword had failed. Now, when it comes to most members of the Great Ring, they're wondering what did he mean by that. They believe the demons in that realm had finally risen up and began to attack again. Except you have Ironfire say, no, Annihilation is back. And that's the problem right there, because Annihilation should be gone. But it's Ironfire saying no, the staff had began to corrupt Genesis once again. And so Annihilation is back, and of course it's coming here. And the question is right now, what should they do? Also, you have Ironfire say, my master, the White Sword, gave me his sword to show that if the sword was taken, it would truly mean the end. Now, while you have the Great Ring continue on with their meeting, well, that is when they realize somebody is walking up. And of course, it is Genesis. Now, when it comes to Genesis, she explains why she wants to go to war against Arrako. And the reason why? Because she believes Arrako has grown weak. Because remember, Apocalypse and her, their big thing was that the strong can only survive. The strong are the only ones who can lead the world into a better direction. The ones who are weak deserve to die unless they are able to learn how to become strong. And so when it came to her and the mutants of Arrako going into Armeth to hold back the forces of Armeth from reaching the earth, she's all like, you were all strong back then. But as soon as Arrako came back to earth, that began y'all downfall, because your goal was supposed to show the rest of the world how we live. The strong can only survive. The weak gotta go, unless the weak is able to adapt. You were supposed to change the earth, change Krakoa as well, but instead you guys did not do that. Instead, you guys went over to Mars and began to live a more peaceful life and just living the life of luxury. And that began the process of you guys no longer being strong. You guys became weak. And that's my problem right there. Now, here's the thing, because you also have some members of the Great Ring actually believe in what she is saying. They're like, yeah, we have become weak. Like, oh my God, we left behind everything we stand for, and now look at us. Now, Storm is not happy about this at all. But before Storm is able to do anything at all, you also have some other members of the Great Ring realize what is about to happen. One, Storm is about to fight against Genesis. But two, they all realize, not all of them, but some of them do realize that when it comes to Genesis, she lost the right to control Arrako. She lost the right to lead Arrako when she had turned into Annihilation back in X of Swords. Now, yes, she did lose to him, but she did become Annihilation for a short period of time. And in that period of time, she lost the right to be the leader of Arrako. And so now they realize what she wants to do. She wants to come back here, control Arrako, and turn Arrako into her own image. Not the image of the people, but the image of herself. And so right now, you have some members say, you have to get rid of the ones who are going to disagree with her, so that they are able to make a plan to stop her down the road. And just like that, the ones who disagree, they are teleported away. Now, as soon as they are, when it comes to Genesis, she said, cowards. Cowards, cowards, cowards. They ran away. Now, technically, they did not run away because some of them, like Storm, wanted to stay and fight against her, but unfortunately, they were forced away. But to her eyes, still cowards. And that right there shows another sign that Arrako has grown weak. As a matter of fact, she blames Storm for Arrako becoming weak because Storm comes from Krakoa and Storm ideas are different than her ideas, and Storm ideas make people weak, and that is a huge problem. And so now this kind of brings the idea of a war coming soon to Arrako. But with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.